Okay, hello and welcome everybody to tonight's class. So as is the theme of this series of classes, what we're doing is we're exploring the 10 mitzvah, the 10 mitzvah campaigns that the Rebbe established, the Lubavitcher Rebbe established, and they serve as special mitzvahs for our time, for our generation, for the needs of our time, especially in the situation that we're right now in, for the protection of the Jewish people. Now, the two mitzvahs that we're going to explore today really very clearly and openly discuss and relate to the protection of Jewish people. The first one is Tefillin. So Tefillin, the mitzvah campaign of Tefillin began in 1967. What happened in 1967? Six-Day War. So if anyone who has ever, it could be you guys are familiar with this already, but if you look at the history of the build-up towards the Six-Day War, it was truly frightening. I think in one way that Israel is in a different situation today than it was back then is that today Israel, in a certain way, doesn't feel isolated from the other countries of the world. Meaning most of the Western world is supportive of Israel today. United States, France, Germany, all these countries are supportive of Israel. And they economically, they trade, they provide weapons to each other, they buy weapons from Israel. There's a lot of relate. Back then, it was a very different scenario. Back then, France was still an ally of Israel, even though that went through its rocky times, famously with the whole submarine story, if you know what I'm talking about. But France, at the time, was a friend of Israel, but many of the other countries were not. Even America, before the 67 war, said, we are neutral in word and in deed. Now, this is as President Nasser of Egypt is swearing to completely destroy Israel, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, all of these countries are openly saying that they're getting involved in this to destroy Israel and wipe them off the map. So this is a very frightening thing. It's building and it's building and it's building, and Egypt is amassing soldiers. Israel's effectively not kind of cut off from the rest of the world. Egypt goes and cuts off the Straits of Tiran to shipping, so Israel can't get things through that avenue. So it was just a really crazy time for Israel. And in the lead up to that, the Rebbe showed an unbelievable show of positivity, of just, this is the land of Israel, these are the people of Israel, there's nothing to worry about, and we have to stay, strong. And his words meant a lot to the people in Israel at the time, because really he was the only positive voice. I think Eshkol, Levi Eshkol, who was the prime minister of Israel at the time, he tried to go on the radio and give over some positive, thing to the Israelis, and his voice kind of faltered and cracked on the radio, which meant that even their prime minister was falling apart. And the fact that the Rebbe was positive and the Rebbe was saying it's going to be good and you don't have to worry was really incredible. I saw a story that there was a family that had a wedding scheduled to happen in Israel, and during this time, and they asked the Rebbe, should we cancel? The Rebbe said, no, go to Israel. It's going to be safe. It's going to be good. Now imagine the type of responsibility the Rebbe's taken himself. This is no joke. People are making life and death decisions based on the advice that he's giving. And you saw this throughout. You saw this in the 73 war. You saw this in the 1991, the Scuds. When you see people coming by dollars and asking the Rebbe, we have kids in seminary, in yeshivas, should we bring them home? The Rebbe says, don't, Israel's the safest place. So really, the Rebbe gave a very positive and strong show of support for Israel. And in 1967, the Rebbe kind of spoke about this many times. Famously, he spoke about this at the Lag BaOmer rally. So he had 20,000 kids gathered outside 770 in New York, and the Rebbe spoke to them. And the Rebbe said, the people in Israel are in a difficult time. We need to do our part to do Torah and mitzvahs to support them. And that Shabbos, which is 2 days before the Yom Kippur War, this is a Chaf Dalet Iyar, the Rebbe spoke about how the mitzvah of Tefillin is going to be a special merit for the people in Israel. Why? So the Rebbe pointed to two places in the Gemara where it talks about tefillin. One is that it says in the Gemara that one who has the name of Hashem upon him will merit to live a long life. What does it mean the name of Hashem is upon him? Tefillin. Tefillin literally means that it's on you. And the Rebbe pointed to that passage, that verse, which speaks about the name of Hashem being upon a person, and that blesses one with long life, saying those who wear tefillin are going to have this blessing of long life. But more famously, the Rebbe pointed to a different verse. It says, "V'ro kol ami haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra lecha v'yaru mimech." The nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is upon you, and they'll fear you. And what's this referring to? The Gemara says this is referring to the tefillin. You're going to see this, whatever you want to call it, the tefillin on you, and on some level, it casts fear upon our enemies, and that will help to win the war. And sure enough, we had miracles. And so there was a huge emphasis on tefillin. People went to army bases putting on tefillin. People went all over. There were tefillin stands popping up everywhere. When the kotel was finally, redeemed, so the Rebbe pushed for right away to have a tefillin stand right by the kotel. And the idea was that tefillin is a special mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah that will provide protection to Jews and the Jewish people, which is also why there's been such an emphasis now during this time to focus on tefillin and encouraging people in tefillin and donating tefillin, etc., etc. Okay, so that is one mitzvah that we're talking about tonight. Mitzvah of tefillin. The second mitzvah of tefillin that we're going to talk about tonight is the mitzvah of tzedakah. A mezuzah. The mitzvah of mezuzah is another very special mitzvah which is related to protection. Why is that so? Because there's a famous medrash which says that a human king, he stands on the inside of his house and he puts his servants in danger. He puts the servants outside. Whereas a God, we live inside our homes, and he instructs us to put the mezuzah outside as our protection. And that's almost like God protecting our homes, God being on the outside protecting. And so this idea of the mezuzah being a source of protection for the people inside the home is seen throughout. So the mezuzah is a security. Mezuzah is a protection for those who live within the home. And so, therefore, when it comes to a time like this, when we're in need of protection and we're talking about our safety and the people in Israel's safety, strengthening the mitzvah of mezuzah is also a special blessing for them and for us, wherever that blessing is needed. So those are the two mitzvahs that we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, since these two mitzvahs are both connected in the sense that they are inscribed on parchment, and we put them inside tefillin, we put them inside thing. So I thought it would be interesting to take a look at the very letters that go inside tefillin and mezuzah, and just talk a little bit about what the differences are, and to actually take a look at the letters and see some interesting things about them. So before we get into actually looking at the letters, if you ever walked into a store and asked for a mezuzah, they're going to ask you a question right away. What's the question they're going to ask you? Parchment. Do you want parchment? Okay, so assuming you want parchment, what's the next question?
Who wrote it?
Who wrote it? Good. Or they're going to asking you, though. You're coming to buy the mezuzah. They're going to ask you a question. What's the question they're going to ask?
Seller's going to.
Yeah.
The store owner's going to.
Seller's going to ask you a question.
How much do you want to spend?
Okay. Good. And another question that they'll likely ask you, they might size you up. They might look at you and say, well, this guy that doesn't look like he's too particular about what type of mezuzah, I'll just give him the standard. But if they think that maybe you're a little bit more specific, they're going to ask you, what ksav do you want? What ksav do you want? What font do you want? Because if you open up a Torah, not all Torahs look the same. Some Torahs look a little bit different. The letters are shaped a little differently. Some of them have different crowns on top. So they're going to ask you, what ksav, what font do you want? So what we're going to try to discover today is just analyzing some of the different fonts, comparing and contrasting, and then just understanding which communities buy what, so that you know when you go to the store next, what type of ksav, what type of font you're going to be looking for. Okay? Now, who said we even need a specific font? Maybe we don't. Maybe just as long as it looks like an aleph, it's good. The answer is, you're right. The answer is, you're right. If you look at the Gemara, if you look in the Talmud, there is no specific discussion about what the letters need to look like. Imagine if I told you an E needs to look like this. E, 3 lines, E, with a line going like this. That's just an E. Like if you grow up with the English language, you know what an E looks like. We don't need a whole tractate of Talmud to talk about what an E looks like. So actually, the Gemara does not discuss what the letters of which go into Tefillin, which go into Mezuzah should look like. It doesn't say. It says certain specific things. It says, like, for example, the long nun should be made sure not to look like a Zion. Let's take a look at how that could look. So imagine, look in your papers here. And for those who are on Zoom, I'm going to do my best here, but it's a little tough to display it, but I'm going to do my best. So you take a look at the Zion, which is right over here. Top line.
Right.
You see that Zion? Now take a look at the nun, the long nun.
Yeah.
See that nun?
Yeah. Same thing as well.
It's the same thing, just longer. Right? So the Gemara says you have to make sure that your long nun doesn't look like a Zion. In other words, make sure the long nun is not too short that ends up looking like a Zion, because it really looks, let's say. So the Gemara says very little things and assumes that you know what the letters look like, and that's what you're going to write them as. And indeed, the Rambam, who codifies all of Jewish law, says no matter what specific shape the letter is shaped, it's kosher. It's fine because it's a Hebrew letter. Doesn't really matter. And that's actually important, because that means that, let's say, a scribe kind of didn't write it perfectly the way that he should, as long as it kind of looks the way it should, it's kosher. And you might actually see this. This personally happened to me a couple of weeks ago. No, it was a couple of months ago. But anyway, I was reading the Torah and I was looking at the letters, and one of the letters kind of looked funny. And so what we do in that situation is we bring over a child. It's called a Shilas Tinnik. Bring a child over and tell me what letter does that look like? And depending on what he says, that's what we go with, because that's really what counts. What counts is, does it look like the letter that it's supposed to look like? If it does, great. So really, we don't need to get into the details of specific fonts. Just like in English, right? You could have an E that could be written in one font and a different font. It's all the same E, right? But nevertheless, there is, and there has been, different customs of how to shape the letters in different ways throughout all the generations. And so we're gonna discuss 4 of them. Okay, we're gonna be 4 different types of fonts, and we'll discuss the different types of communities that use which one and compare them and show the differences. Okay, so the classic one that Sephardic Jews have used for many, many years is called Ksav Vailish, or Ksav Sfard. This is the Sephardic font. Now, did I make a copy of that? I did not. The reason why I didn't is because us, as Ashkenazim, don't use it, and also it's the most simple font. It's a really straightforward font. It's not very complicated. It just looks like the letters, not very complicated. Now, there wasn't an actual, it wasn't kind of clear what the right way to do it, what was not. This Ksav Vailish was the one that these Sephardic communities were using. So the Beis Yosef was Rabbi Yosef Karo, who codified the Shulchan Aruch. he basically brought together the opinions of the major authorities and said, this is based on the majority of these opinions, this is what it should look like. And that is this column. This is called Ksav Beis Yosef. And these are the letters that he put together based on that Ksav Beis Yosef. Okay? Now, we're going to analyze them soon, but let's just keep going. Now, this Ksav Beis Yosef is what is used by Ashkenazi Jews today. So your average, Ashkenazi shul is going to have mezuzahs and tefillin and all that in this letter, using this lettering. Now, the Arizal, who you may be familiar with, Arizal is famously one of the most famous Kabbalists. So he added some twists to the lettering based on Kabbalah. Based on Kabbalah teachings, he said that certain letters should be shaped a different way. Now, I'm going to show you some differences, okay? Take a look. You're going to compare this column to that column, okay? See if you can find the difference in the letter Ches. So if you're looking at the top row, the last letter of the top row, see if you can find the difference between the two images. What do you see?
The Beis Yosef is two Zions connected. And Ari is a father.
Fantastic. See that? So the last letter on the top line is what we call a ches. But a ches is not just a ches. A ches is actually two letters joined. Yeah. If you think about it. In the Beis Yosef's way of writing it, it's two Zions joined. Right? In the Arizal's way, it's a Vav and a Zion joined. See that? Okay, let's keep going. Take a look at the Tes. Actually, don't take a look at the Tes. Sorry.
The Aleph is good. I think. Doesn't the Aleph have a pretty significant difference?
What's the difference?
The bottom.
That little crooked thing over there?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's right because the
I think the Arial
yeah, it could be it's a little blurry. It could be it's there. Okay. But take a look at the letter. Is
that Lamed? That's the Lamed in the Ari. That's not right. It should be filled.
Yeah, that's a mistake. Yeah. Take a look at the ayin. The ayin is the third row, the fourth letter of the third row. Fourth letter of the third row. So you see that ayin?
Crown.
So tell me what you see different there.
The Beis Yosef is wider. The opening in the middle, it looks to be wider.
Okay, good. What else?
Okay. The right hand sort of aims up. So that just
no, I think it's the same. There's one difference in that ayin. See the difference there?
Well, the crown. The stem is in the middle, and here it's off.
Right. Fantastic. So let's pass this on to them. Do you guys have?
No.
So you want to have, how many copies do we have here? Not enough? Oh, shoot. Okay. Yeah, this is a show and tell.
How's that?
We don't have another set. Okay. So, Irv, do you mind just putting in the middle of this? You guys can see together.
We do this every day. We do this every day.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good. So, David, you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the fourth letter on the third line.
This is Ari.
Yeah. Take a look if you can see a difference between the one side and the other side of that fourth letter on the third line.
Oh.
Yeah. Very good. So, in other words, if you think about it, if you just take out this, if you just take out this whole part, it's either a Zion or a Vav, right?
Right.
Do you see that? Right. So, according to the Ari, it's a Vav. According to the Alter Rebbe, it's according to the Beis Yosef, it's a Zion, right? Yeah. Okay, let's keep moving.
Yes.
Take a look Take a look at the letter Tzaddik. Look, see this, the first letter on the fourth line. Tell me what difference you see there.
Two sides.
Tell me.
It's like what a year, which is the other one's years in verse. It's like a year to a brother. First, the other one's no.
Excellent. So the truth is that the tzaddik. You with me? The tzaddik, the first letter on this fourth line, there's actually two differences. The first is on the right side. On the right side, in the Beis Yosef column, on the right column, it's a yud. See that? It's like a little yud. Whereas if you look at the Ari side on that, it's a backwards yud. Do you see that? It's flipped. And then if you also look on the left side of the tzaddik, it's also a difference. That the tzaddik, it looks like a Zion. It's a square, right? Mm-hmm. And the line goes into the middle of the. Right. Whereas the according to the Ari, it's a vav. See that? Mm-hmm. Okay, now that's going to continue into the next letter, which is the long tzaddik. Right. It's the same thing. Take a look at the long tzaddik. You have the same thing playing out. Whereas on the right side, it's a yud, well, like a really elongated yud, but it's a yud. It's the other side, it's a backwards yud. And also on the right side, it's like the long stick is like a Zion. It's like a long Zion. Whereas on the left, it's like a vav. See that? Now, another major difference. Take a look at the letter shin, which is the second to the last letter. What difference do you see there?
The right arm is much thicker at the bottom.
Very good. In other words, in the Beis Yosef side, it's rounded. Yeah. Whereas the Ari side, it's kind of corner. You see that? Mm-hmm. So these are some of the differences between the Arizal's Ksav and the Beis Yosef Ksav. So somebody who is more looking for the Kabbalistic view on these things, somebody who's more, let's say, a Chassid, somebody who's going to be looking for the Arizal because the Arizal followed Kabbalah when he made these type of rulings. Now, the truth is that today, the Arizal Ksav is actually much more complicated than even this, because like any font or like any work of art, right, it takes on a certain shape of its own when more people start writing it, right? Each one is going to write it slightly differently. And so actually today's Arizal font is actually a little bit more pretty than this. Whereas it looks kind of just very boxy here. And it's actually a little bit more stylistically more elegant, the Arizal font. But basically, these are the major differences between the Beis Yosef and the Arizal. Now, take a look at so take a look at this page of the ayans.
What's the third one in the middle?
So over here you have three options. One is, this is the Beis Yosef. The one to the right is the Beis Yosef. The one to the left is the Ari, and the one in the middle is the one we're going to talk about now. The one in the middle is what we call the Alter Rebbe's Ksav. Who's the Alter Rebbe? The Alter Rebbe is the first Chabad Rebbe. The first Chabad Rebbe wrote his own Ksav. We're going to talk about soon why he did it, but let's just take a look at it for a second. The ayin. Does it look very different to the other ones? Yeah. It looks very different, right? Tell me one thing that strikes you as being very different.
The vav is an angle. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Vav is an angle. Good. The way the crowns are. Okay.
Much thicker.
Okay.
Prominent bottom left.
Prominent bottom left. Good.
on both sides.
Yeah, I like that. That's true.
Very much so.
So who does he follow? Do you think he follows the Ari or the Beis Yosef when it comes to the top left, the way of doing the top left? Because you remember the Beis Yosef had it as a Zion, the Ari had it as a Vav. Which one do you think the Alter Rebbe went with?
Zion and above. Ari.
You think it's
Because it seems it's not centered,
it's not centered?
but if it was straight, it would be at the right hand side.
There you go.
So it seems kind of a little bit in between, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now, with that in mind, let's introduce something about the Alter Rebbe's Ksav. So, the Alter Rebbe wrote a Ksav. Why did he write a Ksav? Didn't we have enough problems? Why did he need a? Why did he
wrote a sitter?
Why did he write a sitter?
Because there's so many different versions of it. He wanted to have one that everybody can agree on.
Good. And you're right, but I want to expand on that. And that is that really what the Alter Rebbe really what he brought out and what he was so famous for was fusing the inner dimensions of Torah and the Kabbalah with the revealed parts of Torah. And so the legend goes like this, that the Maggid of Mezrich, who was the Alter Rebbe's teacher, called him in one day and said that on high, there's a big commotion because there's the Beis Yosef way, which the Beis Yosef way is based on the revealed parts of Torah, just the Talmudic analysis way, which is just regular. And then you had the Arizal, who's based on Kabbalah, and they're clashing. And therefore, things are being written differently. They're both true, they're both fine, they're both kosher, but there's this friction. So the Maggid said, I want you, the Alter Rebbe, to go and write a new Ksav, which is going to somehow fuse these together. The Alter Rebbe went and wrote a new Ksav. And so you see some of the accomplishments, what the Alter Rebbe did in this Ksav. So take a look. The thing goes, but it's not all the way on the right like this. It's somehow a little bit in the middle there. So it can be a Vav or could be a Zion. It kind of depends on your mood. Which fuses both the Beis Yosef way and the Ari way. It's somewhere in the middle. Now, the fact that it's slanted like this is true, but that's really not something which is so relevant as like a source of dispute. It used to be that people would write like this with slanted. Today, it's become much more standard to write it straight. It's not really it's not a feature of any specific font. It's just it used to be one way. These days, it's become more straight, but that's not really a major difference. Now, we see this same thing play out in the Shin. So take a look at the Shin. This page. So you see the same thing in both areas. Remember, the Shin was different in two ways. Do you guys remember? How is the Shin different? Zayin and Vav, like we said before, and also the rounded bottom. So take a look what the Alter Rebbe does. It's really kind of beautiful. It's got a rounded bottom, but it's also pointy. See that? It's rounded, but it also makes a little point at the end to make it also look like the Beis Yosef. So, and then also at the top, you have the same thing playing out, where it's not exactly a Zion, so not exactly a Vav, it's somewhere in between. See that? So that's some of what makes the Alter Rebbe's Ksav unique. However, there are some problems with the Alter Rebbe's Ksav, not problems with the Alter Rebbe's Ksav, but rather problems with looking at the Alter Rebbe's Ksav this way. And that is, take a look, for example, at the letter Beis. So take a look. I know I'm switching you back and forth a lot here. Take a look at the letter Beis on these two. Take out this page and take out this page. These two pages. Take a look at both of them, yeah? Take a look at the letter Beis on both of these sides. Would you say they look the same?
there's a really so slant, yeah, on the basis of there's like this that
Yeah, a tiny little thing on the bottom right, right?
crowns are all
Okay, now compare that to the base on the Alter Rebbe side. Take a look at the base on the Alter Rebbe side. What did you say?
Looks like a couple of it.
Very good. So in the Alter Rebbe's Ksav, it's not like a straight. You look on this side, you'll see it's straight. Boom. Right? Just like one straight line on the bottom. Whereas the base on the Alter Rebbe, how does it go? It goes straight, but then it makes a diagonal up. Now, where did that come from? If there's no argument here, then why did the Alter Rebbe have to come along and make a new shape to the base?
that's it.
Right? You see what I'm saying? Now, that's true also in the letter Nun. So take a look at the letter Nun on this page. Does the letter Nun look the same on both sides? So this is the first letter on the third line.
The bottom horizontal piece is a little longer.
It looks pretty much the same, right? Now take a look at the Alter Rebbe. Look at the Nun.
A piece of the plant.
I want to focus on the top of the Nun.
Yeah.
It's not in the middle, right?
Everything's round.
It's kind of to the right. Why did the Alter Rebbe have to do that? If all the differences stem from just trying to make a compromise between the Ari and the Beis Yosef, well, then how come? Where does this come from? Why? What's it needed for? And another area where you see this is in the letter Tzaddik. Take a look at the letter Tzaddik. See it? So let's see what do we say the differences are between the Beis Yosef and the Ari? Good. So on the right side, according to the Beis Yosef, it's a Yud. According to the Ari, it's a backwards Yud, right? Also, this side, it's either a Zion or it's a Vav. Take a look at the Alter Rebbe's way. So what does he do? Look at the right side. What does he do? Who does he follow on the right side of the tzaddik? The backwards. No denying that, right? It's clearly that way. And when it comes to the other side, what does he do?
Somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between again. Although actually, this one kind of looks more like a Zion than the other one.
Yes, it
does. But again, if we're using this rounded form to make compromise, well, then on the right side, it should be a rounded form. Put the stick somewhere towards the more middle side, and then it would be a compromise. It wouldn't be a Yud, it wouldn't be a backwards Yud, it would be somewhere in between. But it's neither. So this has been something of a real confusion about the Alter Rebbe's Ksav, like what's its purpose and how serious you would be taking it. So we do know, and also the other major problem is that the Alter Rebbe's Ksav wasn't written down clearly as this is the Alter Rebbe's Ksav. What happened was the Alter Rebbe taught this Ksav to a person named Reb Ruvain. Reb Ruvain the scribe. Reb Ruvain taught it to somebody who taught it to somebody who wrote something for somebody in our generation. So we have, an art. We have a piece of something, of Tefillin, Mezuzah, whatever it is, written that way. But first of all, who says that it was written correctly? So that we know is taken care of. The sixth Chabad Rebbe, previous Rebbe, said this was written correctly. So we know it was written correctly. But some of the nuances, you don't know, like how far can we take some of the nuances, right? How far do we say that it's, well, every artist, doesn't do, we're not a machine, so you don't do things exactly. You try to do it correctly, but some things you don't do exactly right. So how particular should we be with the nuances of a particular way of writing or not? So we look for other areas where the Alter Rebbe's Ksav is written. Where's another area? Right here. So the other side of this is a Megillah. This is a Megillah which was written by the fourth Chabad Rebbe, the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash was actually very sick. You'll notice there's two Rebbes who we don't have a picture of. It's the second Chabad Rebbe and the fourth Chabad Rebbe. And they say that the reason why there's no picture of the fourth Chabad Rebbe is because he was actually physically very sick. And so it would be respectful to make a whole picture out of it. And so one of the things that he did to, as therapy and whatever, was he actually built things. He built lots of different things. And he built a table, handcrafted table. And one of the things that he did is he learned how to write, you learn to become a scribe. And so he wrote many different things. He wrote a Megillah for each one of his children. One of the children was Rebbe Rashab, who handed it over to the previous Rebbe who came to America. And if you go to New York today, you can go visit the library and you can see this Megillah that was written by the fourth Chabad Rebbe in a casing. You can see it for yourself. That's this. And you can see some of what we've been talking about. You can see some of the letters, how he writes them here. And, based on what we were talking about, you can actually look for specific letters and see how they're written, and you'll see that they're written the way we were talking about. But what you're looking at here is kind of cool. It was written by the fourth Chabad Rebbe. Now, this also, because the Alter Rebbe's Ksav is more nuanced, it's also more difficult to write. Yeah. And that's also why it costs a lot more. So there's definitely what to be said about buying it. As Chabad Chassidim, definitely what to be said about buying it. However, many Chabad Chassidim also are not super, particular about it. And I think some of it stems from the fact that we're not 1,000% sure, how to, about every nuance on it. And also you have to have somebody who's very skilled in writing it. So I would actually want to ask Tzviki Krasiansky, if you met him, he moved here about a year ago. He's a scribe. I'm curious if he writes the Alter Rebbe's Ksav. Because not all scribes do, because you see how there's a lot of differences. So some scribes will only write, it's like in coding, in the world of coding, you'll have a coder who only writes Java and not Python. So it's the same thing, that there's differences, and therefore you could have a scribe who only writes Beis Yosef, only writes Ari, and he doesn't write the other ones because there's differences, and you don't want to mess it up, and you want to be an expert in one specific area. So it's something that people will, might not be qualified to do the Alter Rebbe. And especially the reason why you really need somebody to be good in the Alter Rebbe is because since there's no official thing, like this is what the Alter Rebbe's Ksav is, how do we know how to write it? We examine this, meaning the Megillah that was written by the Marash. We examine the Tefillin or Mezuzah that was written by that student of Reb Ruvain, who was told how to do it from the Alter Rebbe, and we examine them and we say, oh, okay, this is how it's written. So unless a person really knows how to examine and follow to the T the way it's written, he could be getting it wrong, and then you're just paying for nothing. No,
it doesn't hustle the.
No, of course not. But it doesn't make it any more good, right? Either it's the right thing, or you're deviating, and then once you're deviating, you might as well just get something cheaper for no reason. So there are definitely some people who absolutely swear by the Alter Rebbe's Ksav and say that that's most beautiful, and the truth is it's really quite intricate. Like it's quite, it really is a work of art to create something like this. And the person, you take a look at the top right of these things, these are actually screenshots of a class that a guy named Fitz Rabin, who is a really expert scribe, gave a class on this. And so these are some of the slides that he used in his class. I reached out to him today to actually get his original slideshow, and he's in Washington for the thing, and he said, I'm not gonna be able to get it to you today. So I was like, okay. So I just did this. But it is with his permission. But you get a bit of a look of so he's an expert. Like his stuff, he could sell a mezuzah for like $600 because he's excellent. Like you can actually see on his website, he has samples of his stuff. He's very good. And Krasiansky, Tzuki actually studied by him. Yeah, that's he has like a yeshiva where he teaches guys how to write. Krasiansky studied by him. Anyway, okay. Now, let's move on to some other things related to mezuzah and tefillin. So,
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
yes, Sid, I hope we were able to follow somewhat.
Yes, practically all of it.
Oh, good. Okay.
How many scribes, kosher scribes, are there in Atlanta?
So I know that there's one in Toko, Rabbi Asa. I know there's one in the Chabad community who moved recently, but there's definitely one in Dunwoody.
Daneman.
Yeah, so I know of 3, and Irvin here is saying that even Rabbi Koshkaman is also a scribe.
I think he is. No,
Okay.
No, he may be the shelf. He
Um,
may be.
yeah, I think Atlanta could probably use some more.
Okay, and the second question, which of these mezuzahs that you described over the last period of time do you use?
So I, in my house, have Arizal. But my tefillin are the Alter Rebbe.
Have 2 different ones.
So the simple reason, ready for it? The Alter Rebbe cost a lot of money. So when you're buying 15 mezuzahs, it already adds up. But for tefillin, which I'm using for the rest of my life, at least my father decided to invest a little more in it.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Each his own. Sometimes the reasons are not so esoteric. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, so let's talk about something else about tefillin. So tefillin, of course, that if you take a look at Chabadniks davening or other Hasidim, you'll notice that after davening finishes, they'll take a little longer to get out of shul. Why is that? Because we have 2 pairs of tefillin. You familiar with this? So we so many Hasidim put on 2 pairs of tefillin. One is called Rashi and one is called Rabbeinu Tam. What is Rashi and what is Rabbeinu Tam? Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam were people. These were great commentators on the Talmud. Rashi famously wrote lots on the Talmud. Rabbeinu Tam was his grandson, who had the chutzpah to argue with his grandfather a lot. And his name was Yaakov. And he was actually a famous person. He was very, very wealthy. He lived in the time of the Crusades, and he bribed the Crusaders to
Rashi Tom?
no, yeah, Rabbeinu Tam.
Okay.
Famous. Anyway, he's a very famous person, and he argued with his grandfather on certain things. One of the things that he argued with his grandfather about was the order of how to put the parchment into the compartments of the head tefillin. So if you take a look at the head tefillin, there are 4 compartments there. Each compartment has parchment put there with a different thing set on it. Now, everyone agrees what needs to go on the parchment. The question is, in what order? In what order should the parchments be put in? Meaning, if you're starting from the right, Are you doing Shema, Bahaya, whatever the last one is, I'm forgetting? Or are you starting from the other side? Are you starting from Bahaya? Meaning, are you doing it from the right to left of the person wearing it? Are you doing it from the right to left of the person looking at it? Da, 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 da. So the rabbis always find something to make an argument about. So Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam had this long-standing argument. Rabbeinu Tam felt the way that he felt. And there's a famous, really like wild story, which is told in a book called the Shailus Teshuvos Min Hashamayim. And in that book, the person writes how Rabbeinu Tam somehow communicated with heaven, asking what's correct, and he got his answer. And it wasn't the answer that he wanted. The answer was that the Halachah is like Rashi. And Rabbeinu Tam said, sorry, I'm not going with that, because the Halachah also is that Halachah has to be decided on this earth. We don't decide Halachah based on something coming from heaven. It needs to be decided by people on this earth. And my conclusion, based on whatever he on his studies, was this way. And so he rejected even what he supposedly got from heaven, which is just wild to think about. That this is this type of personality who we're talking about. Yeah.
But Rabbeinu Tam put on Rashi.
Yeah, I would assume he only put on Rabbeinu Tam.
I already did both.
He did both.
That's what I heard.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. So so Rashi is the accepted opinion, and that's why in all communities Rashi's is put on. But Rabbeinu Tam's is something which we put on as as an extra kind of thing to fulfill the mitzvah in the most special way. And it used to be actually that you had to ask permission to put in Rabbeinu Tam. That people would ask the Rebbe permission before they would go and put in Rabbeinu Tam. Because Rabbeinu Tam is not just another way of fulfilling the mitzvah. Rabbeinu Tam is regarded as being a higher, more lofty, more, you have to be fitting for that to be holding there. You don't just do it because you feel like it. And it used to be that people actually had to ask, am I at the level where, I'm fitting for this? And people would get permission then. But at some point, the Rebbe said that people should start to do it on their own from their Bar Mitzvah, and that's what's done. From their Bar Mitzvah, people put on Rabbeinu Tam, and the Rebbe even encouraged Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who we've spoken about many times at these classes, who was a great rabbi in America, but he was not from Hasidic lineage, to put on Rabbeinu Tams also, and he did. He put on Rabbeinu Tams as well.
There's some other versions as well, aren't there?
Yes. So the Rebbe would put on 4 pairs of tefillin. And that is Shimushei Merabah and Rayot. These are other opinions on how the tefillin should be written. And in the Hayom Yom, which is there's the daily thoughts for each day of the year, the Rebbe actually, one of the Hayom Yoms actually describes how a person who wants to put on all 4 pairs of tefillin, how he should put them on. So in case you feel like doing that tomorrow, let me know. I'll hook you up.
You need any other? Yeah, you'd need other.
Yeah, you need.
Solutions.
Yeah.
The arm's fine.
The arm is fine. Yeah. Okay. Now. Mezuzah. Let's discuss some things connected to Mezuzah. The Mezuzah needs to go on the right-hand side when you're walking in. So it's called the Yamin Hanichnas. And that is what we try to do. So take a look at some of the doors in this room. You're heading into that room. So the Mezuzah goes on the right side. Now, where on the doorpost does it go? It goes on the top third, the bottom part of the top third. Does that make sense? So take a look at that. That's how it is. Now, you'll notice that it's slanted. Why is it slanted?
It's not enough to go straight now.
Because I couldn't decide straight or.
Jeff, you are getting the hang of this.
It's a compromise.
So exactly. So it's this is another argument between Rashi and Tosfos. I'm not sure if it's Rabbeinu Tam. Rashi and Tosfos. There's a certain passage of the Gemara which says that if the mezuzah is positioned like a bolt, then it is not kosher. So the question is, what does it mean like a bolt? So some people say that it means straight like this. Some people, there's an argument of how to understand that piece of the Gemara. Based on how you understand that piece of the Gemara is going to be how you should put it up. And so Rashi says that you should do it this way. Tosfos says it should be this way. And therefore, we make a compromise and we put it like this. Now, it's a very strange thing to do a compromise like that. I don't know of any other mitzvahs. Actually, besides for what we kind of described today, we don't have a lot of mitzvahs which we do compromises. It's like, maybe, I'm just trying to think of like other examples. It's like, an argument whether matzah can be made from spelt or not. So we'll make a matzah which is half spelt and half, you don't do that. It's just either you follow one opinion and that's it. If you go like this, you're actually following neither opinion, right? You're not following Rashi, you're not following Rabbi Tam. So what's going on? So this is a famous, fluffy kind of, thing that this is done because really it's meant to teach us the way Mezuzah goes outside the home. It's meant to teach us how we're meant to run a home. So just like over here, both sides are not winning, right? Rashi's not winning, Rabbi Tam is not winning, slanted, compromise. So the way that you have to run your home, you're not always going to win. You're not always going to get your way. Compromise. And that's why Mezuzah, which is the one mitzvah we find this, is because it's actually trying to teach us a lesson. When you pass that Mezuzah after a long day, after work, and you're ready to just tell everyone, go away. I want to have my own time. You have to remember compromise. You have to remember shalom bayis. You have to remember that you have a duty to keep the home, enjoyable and peaceful. And that's why it's right there as you walk into the home. Now, we said that it goes on the right-hand side when you walk into the room. Now, here's the problem. What do you do if you have a room that has two entrances? Which one is the entrance? And which one am I saying I'm going in, and which one am I going out?
Clearly, if there's an outside door, there's one of them. That's going to be a going in door. I have that door there.
It's very good. So let's take this actual room. So there's the door outside there, and then there's this door here. So which side of the door is the Mezuzah going to go?
We have the right side over there.
Okay. And over here?
Now, here, look over there. That's that one you would think if you're coming from there. I mean, this is a little complicated arrangement. I would think that the door should be on the other side. That one should be on the other side. But most people are coming from.
Oh, so you're saying a good point. You're saying it should be on the other side because really you're heading further into the building from this room.
Right.
So why do we put it that way? So basically, I'm not saying that this is how everyone.
Here, it's because the flow of first that door is locked all day long. If anybody wants to get into the building, they got to go through the side door.
I don't know if that's a factor that Allah would. No, I don't think so. Unless the door is locked permanently, I don't think Allah would look at it as. No, I don't think we would look at it as this is the main room, and that's so the reason why we do it that way. This perfect example is, and this is the Chabad approach. So I'm not telling you that everyone's going to follow this. We follow something what we call Heker Tzir. Heker Tzir means we follow which way the door swings. So if the door swings like here, out, then it means I'm going into this room. If the door swings this way, then I'm going to put it on the right-hand side, going in this way. So if the door had swung, exactly, it would be the opposite. And that's why, in that case, you have the Mezuzah,
That makes sense.
Now, that is only when you have two entrances to the same room. Now, something like this is a storage closet.
Yeah.
There's only one way to get in.
Right.
So there, you're clearly going to do the Yamin HaNichnas. There's only one way to get in.
On the right hand.
The right-hand side going inside.
Even if the door swung the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Now, in the case like this, will the Mezuzah go on this side? For the door or the other side of the door?
So it would be on the other side, but the door
Right.
opens and it would be still on the right side.
Yeah.
Inside, right.
So we use-
Yeah.
We have one in our, two in our house.
Now, one kind of interesting thing is that this is a kind of in Chabad tradition also Imagine that room had a window going outside. So this actually happened. And the Rebbe at the time said that the mezuzah should not go like how it is. The mezuzah should follow the way the door swings.
Because of the window.
So they said, what are you talking about? There's only one way to get in. So he said, no, you can get in through the window.
That's not a common.
I agree with you. But that's in the Chabad tradition, and therefore the Chabad tradition will be that unless there's literally only one way to get into the room, i.e. through this door, there's no windows to the storage room. If there's another way, you will follow the Heker Tzir going into. What?
What if there is no, that window does not have the ability to open up? Just a plain pane of glass.
Oh, no, then yeah.
Okay, it has to be a window that.
A window that opens up. But again, these things are a bit tricky. And how do we kind of determine Chabad Psak when it comes to these things? We actually look at 770. 770 was the Rebbe's headquarters, or was where the Frierdiker Rebbe lived. So these things are good examples of where we can actually learn some of these halachas. And people have done extensive articles comparing and just trying to understand why in this case it's like this. And so what I've just told you is the kind of the classic Chabad thing, but there may be other ways to understand it, and that's part of it also.
So if that is room, if we're a window inside that room and the door swung the other way, you would put it by the way the door swings.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We will see you hopefully next week for those of you who are in town. And for those on Zoom, thank you.
Thank you.